I'm with David Nekrutman from the Isaiah Projects. Now, David, what is the Isaiah Projects?
The Isaiah Projects is a ministry dedicated to creating Hebraic resources for Christians to understand the roots of their faith, with a specific focus on Christian homeschool Bible education via biblical excavations. And we also do humanitarian aid by providing humanitarian assistance to Christians in Bethlehem as well as to Ethiopian single mothers. So that is the overall mission, is really basically focused on education.
I imagine at the moment that your organization's become more focused on humanitarian work at the moment. We've just had a rocket that landed in Bat Yam a few days ago. Tell us what happened there.
So obviously, we're in a new phase of the war, and since October 7th, the Isaiah Projects has focused on a few things. Number one, providing first responders with the necessary equipment to do their job, to provide humanitarian assistance to the survivors of October 7th on the Israeli border with Gaza, and number three, helping to rebuild those communities and provide them a security systems that will protect them in the future. And then I sort of was on my way phasing out from everything, spending more time in the education. And obviously, we're in a new phase of the war with Iran starting basically Friday. And what happened with Bat Yam specifically, as well as Petah Tikva and Haifa and some other places, is that buildings are getting hit by Iranian ballistic missiles. And then you have search and rescue teams going in through the rubble, trying to get people who are alive out or trying to find the people who did not make it and be able to identify the body and give closure to the family and mourn properly. So you and I were speaking yesterday because we were providing Lahava, the search and rescue team under the fire department, to provide them the necessary equipment. I know this may be shocking to some people listening to this program, but they didn't have a what's called a black diamond saw blade, which, as you know, diamonds cut through everything. And you would have expected a search and rescue team to have that. They didn't have that. They needed a cordless solar panel generator. They need a special communications system. So, unfortunately, the fire department's budget becomes smaller and smaller until a crisis hits when there's fire in Israel. But in this case, anticipating more ballistic missiles coming to Israel and with the potential hitting buildings and having the same type of scenario, we went in and just delivered all the equipment that the search and rescue team for Lahava is. And I just got a call now from one of the Magen David Adom search and rescue teams that have been working 24/7 and this also need a certain type of communication system. So as you know, when you're in a building like this, it's not a typical walkie-talkie type of system. You need a special one to be able to hear each other. So I've been focusing on that. Then there's first responders that need bottled water or proper another, generators seem to be a big popular item in this time.
Have you actually been down to the Bat Yam rocket attack site and seen the devastation? What's it like?
Yeah, 100%. So first you have to understand the magnitude. It's not just the building that gets hit and you see the devastation, but it was almost a 6 block radius
Mm.
of just the power of what a ballistic missile does and knocking out windows, apartments, and stuff. And yeah, so we're seeing this devastation that there are thousands upon thousands of apartments that have been affected from Iranian ballistic missiles, that some buildings have to be completely demolished and rebuilt, and there are apartments that have to be completely renovated. So we're in a sort of we'll see what happens. I mean, our hope is that the Iranian regime will be completely turned over, that whoever takes over will see peace as an opportunity with Israel, and we don't have to go through this, and we don't have to have Iran's nuclear threat over Israel at any point in time in the future. That's the hope.
Mm.
And so sometimes in order to bring peace, you have to use strength.
Have you been able to actually speak to some of the people on the ground at Bat Yam to find out their stories and how they've escaped and things?
So we came from the perspective of first responders as
Mm.
opposed to the people. Obviously, what we see on television, the news gives over those stories because the tendency usually is to focus on this particular site as a general representation of the entire country. And my perspective is 10 million people went through hairy nights, 10 million people woke up. There are people, unfortunately, who were killed. There are people who are injured, but that's not the complete representation of what Israel is. We're not reeling from this, we're resilient. I do believe October 7th was a reeling moment, but what's happening with Iran is we're seeing our resilience and we're seeing people coming together. And obviously, what happens in Bat Yam or in Haifa or in Petah Tikva, that's where it's happening. But if you pay attention to news, they keep repeating the clip over and over again because there's nothing else to talk about besides that. And I think what we should be talking about is the resiliency of 10 million people out there. So our job is really to see what we can do for the first responders, attending to it and what equipment, and let the news people take care of the stories of what's going on.
Have you been to some of the other sites as well, like you said, the other places?
So right now we only focused on Bat Yam. I think the magnitude of what took place at Bat Yam was very overwhelming. And going there, we I wanted to get a sense of how much of a blast, how does this affect the community around them? As you know, there was a Christian family that was completely wiped out by an Iranian ballistic missile up in the north, a place called Tamra. So the magnitude of that is a little different. We pray for anybody who's related to this Christian Arab family, citizens of Israel. But the Bat Yam, I think, really was overwhelming. And then it was followed by obviously Haifa and Petah Tikva. And so the search and rescue team that we're helping goes to Haifa and goes to Petah Tikva and dealing with that situation. So we're just, again, I'm coming from the perspective of first responders because I feel if I'm getting involved in the personal story, you get so overwhelmed and emotional that you sometimes can't function in order to do the work you need to do. I found that also with October 7th. For me, I had to focus on specifically, okay, the first responders needs this, temporary humanitarian assistance for the survivors. But I can give you a story. I was one of the people who worked with Avi Shimris, and his son, Alon Shimris, in December of 2023, was killed by friendly fire in Gaza. He was one of the hostages. He was with two other of his friends. They were escaping, and somehow the signals got all interrupted, and unfortunately, he got killed. Up until December of 2023, I was wearing a yellow band that I worked with one of the fathers of the hostages. And after that, I couldn't wear it anymore because that reminded me of Alon Shimriz, and I would get very sad, and it would take away from what I needed to do. So I realized very early on, for me to function in a warlike state, I must focus on task on hand, and then therapy will be after the war.
I imagine a lot of people are going to need therapy. They'll be in shock and trauma. I know the last time I met you was in Jerusalem, and you were providing hotels for people after October the 7th. Are some of these people today going to need to be going into hotels because their apartments have been destroyed?
So the answer is yes. So when you met me, there was no mandatory evacuation in the first week of the war for communities being hit from Hamas, from Gaza, into the communities next door. And it was only, we saw the writing on the wall when the mayor of Sderot was begging the prime minister, please evacuate my community. And I know he didn't have a plan because I know what it is to take a group to Israel and give them lodging, let alone 30,000 people. What are you going to do without a plan? We realized there was going to be a mandatory evacuated line. That means if you're across the street from that mandated line, if you decide to go into a hotel in Jerusalem, the government's not going to give you subsidy for that. So we decided to work with the families from Moshav Mish'en that literally was across from the line. And then we gave reprieve for 50 families for the second week in the war. And then the funds ran out, but we were able to retain funding for 15 families that remained in Jerusalem to the end of October of 2023. And there it's also you're dealing with the families, right? And you know funds are going to run out, but you're giving them a little bit of reprieve, but you can't get emotionally attached because you have to work on the next project. So yeah, that's when you met me. So yes, I would say in this case, Israel is more organized. You have a home front command that is dealing with the people who have lost their homes or can't go back to their homes because once you have a radius of where the ballistic missile hit, people have to evacuate. So home front command right now is much better than it was at the beginning of October 7th. So we leave that with the state. There's subsidies for that. Our particular mission is where the state and the army are not coming in to provide immediate relief. That's where we feel our mission should be and focus on. So it's very short term, immediate projects.
How important is the work that you're doing today?
Well, first of all, I always do this with Jews and Christians together. That's number one. I think we're the only organization that has that mandate that I always believe covenant land comes with covenant responsibility with people who are covenanted, who believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So we work together in order to show that Jews and Christians can work together as an example of what it means to be a witness to the world of what a covenant relationship should look like. So I think that's been my mandate from the beginning of the war. We still continue to do it, and we pool our resources together. So by pooling the resources, we could do more good for other people and expand the projects and helping one another in this land, whether it be a Druze community, because I've been working with some organizations to provide relief for the Druze community in Syria that is under IDF control. So all of this is happening with Jews and non-Jews and even people who are next door neighbors as well. I just believe that I can't be who I am as a Jew fully in this land, stewarding this land, without the nations. And I just don't know of any other faith community outside of Judaism that I only see that believes in God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's Christianity. So we believe in the same God. We have a common scripture, and we believe that we're supposed to do kingdom work. And so, why be separate communities doing separate things? Why don't we just be a light together? So that's the focus I've been working on.
Has it been a lot of fun working together with the Christian community?
It has. I just, whether it be Pastor Robbie and Tommy Coleman from Zion's Bridge that decided to come before the Iranian phase of the war and are here and willing to, put boots on the ground, to an organization like Bridges for Peace and Peter Fass, who's the CEO. And I remember the first Monday after October 7th, we went down to Sderot to deliver the first 500 bags of food and not knowing whether or not we're going to come back out of Sderot for the rocket attacks. And so I saw a organization that has a food bank that its staff stayed and they could have gone, they could have left and they didn't. So I'm inspired by those who have a heart for Israel in the Christian community. And that means I get to work with miracles every single day. Not only have we become the divine agents to give relief to our fellow human beings here in Israel, but I've never seen anything like what we're doing right now. It's unprecedented to have Jews and Christians really work together like this. And I think it's just more than crisis. It's just we feel there's a bond I don't think we've ever experienced beforehand. And to the credit to the remnant within the Christian world who stands here and are the hands and feet of blessing for representing for many Christians around the world. So it's an honor to be part of this historical moment.
Have you seen the miracle of God providing for all the needs that you're actually working with? Because you've been doing this for quite a number of years with since the war. Have you seen God's hand of provision and the miracle of the finance coming in?
So the answer is yes. So right from the beginning, my take on waking up every day is God will provide whatever need is going to come my way. And my answer has to be yes. And now the logistics and the fundraising, obviously. But so far, I always say there's got to be a reason why someone contacted me because I really don't do promotion to everybody out there. And but if someone's giving me a call, then there's a rhyme and reason why I'm getting this call to do this need. And then I vet it and then I say, okay, let's try to work to solve the problem of right now. So I always deal with short-term projects and in cooperation with Jews and Christians for the immediate impact.
What is your prayer for Israel? What is your prayer for Iran as well?
So again, I look at the Iranian leaders or those who remain within the Iranian leadership that I hope they see that really peace with Israel should be the way. I'm really concerned about the Iranian citizens. I know many of them don't like their leaders, but they seem to be, trapped under their leadership. So maybe for the very first time since 1979, there is a moment where we can turn the table where an enemy doesn't need to be an enemy anymore. And the proof of it is we had the Abrahamic Accords. We were becoming diplomatic friends with countries that were not friendly to us in the past. I do believe there's a way to forge a future. So this is again, this is my worldview thinking. I believe Messiah is coming, but I also believe that my job is to make sure Messiah's job is less when Messiah comes. There's a covenantal partnership to bring the kingdom into the world. So part of that is making sure what Messiah has to take care of when Messiah comes is a lot less than what we were given as responsibility. So that's what I see on a macro level. There is the possibility of true peace right now between Iran and Israel. Obviously, in the coming days, we're going to see some stuff happening, unfolding. It could be even tonight. We don't know. But just to let the Iranian people know that Israel is not interested in war. Israel is really interested in peace and economic prosperity between our countries. And may their hearts see the same for Israel, that they can see how much we don't want war, but we want peace. But we also have to make sure that those who are part of satanic forces are no longer around.
What is your website for people who'd like to help Israel in their time of need?
It's www.theisaiahprojects.com, www.theisaiahprojects.com.
Well, David, thank you very much for sharing today.
My honor, blessings, and only peace in the future.